I found out my wife was cheating on me the night her lover showed up at my doorstep, bleeding. It was a typical Wednesday evening. I had just finished cleaning up after dinner when the doorbell rang. Rachel, my wife, was in the shower, so I went to answer it. Standing there, clutching his side, was a man I didn't recognize. His shirt stained with blood and panic in his eyes. "Is Rachel here?" he asked, his voice strained. My first instinct was confusion. "Who are you?" I demanded. "Please," he gasped. "I need to see Rachel. It's important." Before I could respond, Rachel appeared at the top of the stairs, her hair wet and a towel wrapped around her. Her face went pale when she saw him. "Logan," she whispered, her voice trembling. The name hit me like a freight train. Logan. The man she had sworn was just a work colleague. The man whose name I'd seen pop up on her phone late at night. My chest tightened as the pieces started to fall into place. "What the hell is going on?" I asked, my voice sharp. Rachel froze, her eyes darting between me and Logan. Then, in an almost robotic tone, she said, "Michael, let him in. We need to talk." Logan sat on the couch, wincing as Rachel fussed over his wound. I stood across the room, arms crossed, demanding answers. "You're going to tell me everything. Now." Rachel hesitated, her hands shaking as she dabbed at Logan's side with a towel. Finally, she looked up at me, guilt etched into her face. "I've been seeing Logan," she admitted. "It started a few months ago, but it's not what you think." I laughed bitterly. "Not what I think. So, you're not having an affair. It's more complicated than that," she said, her voice pleading. "Logan, he's in trouble. Serious trouble." Logan groaned, trying to sit up. "They're after me," he said. "And if they find me, they'll come after Rachel too." "Who's after you?" I demanded. Logan hesitated before replying. "People I owe money to. Dangerous people." Rachel cut in. "Michael, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I was trying to help him." "Help him?" I repeated, incredulous. "By sleeping with him?" She flinched but didn't deny it. My stomach churned. The woman I thought I knew was a stranger. And now this stranger had dragged danger right to our doorstep. As the night wore on, the situation spiraled. Logan explained that he had borrowed money from a criminal syndicate to fund a failed business venture. When he couldn't pay it back, they started coming after him. Rachel, feeling sorry for him, had tried to help by giving him money, our money. "How much?" I asked, dreading the answer. Rachel's voice was barely audible. 50,000. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. "You gave him $50,000? Are you insane? I thought I could help him get out of it," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I never meant for it to go this far." Before I could respond, there was a loud crash from outside. The three of us froze. Logan's face went pale. "They're here," he whispered. The next few minutes were a blur. Logan insisted we turn off the lights and lock the doors. I grabbed the baseball bat I kept in the closet, my heart pounding as I peeked through the curtains. Two men were outside, their silhouettes illuminated by the porch light. One of them was holding a gun. "We need to call the police," I said, reaching for my phone.
"No,"
Logan hissed. "If they find out I've gone to the cops, they'll kill me. And Rachel." My grip on the bat tightened. I was trapped in a nightmare I didn't ask for, thanks to a woman I no longer recognized. What happened next changed everything. As the men outside pounded on the door, Logan made a desperate decision. "I'll go out there," he said. Maybe I can talk to them, buy you some time. Rachel grabbed his arm.
No.
They'll kill you. I have to try, he said, his eyes meeting mine. Take care of her. She doesn't deserve this. I didn't respond. Couldn't. All I could think was how absurd it was for him to ask me to protect the woman who had betrayed me. Logan stepped outside, closing the door behind him. Rachel and I listened in silence as muffled voices turned into shouting. Then, a single gunshot pierced the air. Rachel screamed, rushing to the door, but I stopped her. Don't, I said. We don't know if it's safe. Moments later, there was another knock at the door. My blood ran cold. Open up, a voice commanded. We know you're in there. The choices I made that night set off a chain of events I could never have anticipated. Betrayal, danger, and impossible decisions forced me to confront not only the truth about Rachel, but also about myself. And in the end, the person I thought I was, the life I thought I had, was gone forever. The knock at the door was louder this time, more insistent. Rachel clutched my arm, her face pale and tear-streaked. We have to do something, she whispered. Stay quiet, I said, gripping the bat tighter. My mind raced through options. Calling the police was out. If Logan's claims about these men were true, involving the authorities could escalate things. But opening the door seemed even worse. We're not going away, the voice outside growled. You have 10 seconds before we come in ourselves. Rachel's breathing quickened. I pressed a finger to my lips, signaling her to stay silent. But then she made the worst decision possible. Wait, she called out, her voice shaking. I'll open the door.
Rachel, no.
I hissed, but it was too late. She moved toward the door, trembling as she unlocked it. I stood behind her, bat raised, ready for whatever came next. The door swung open, revealing 2 men. The one in front was stocky, with a scar running down his cheek. The other was taller, leaner, his eyes cold and calculating. Where's Logan? Scarface demanded, stepping inside without invitation. Rachel backed away, her hands raised defensively. He went out the back. He's gone. Scarface's eyes narrowed. You think we're stupid? We heard the gunshot. Where is he? Dead? I said, stepping forward. Your guys shot him. He's outside. The tall man's lips curled into a smirk. If he's dead, then you owe us 50 grand, and we'll leave you alone. We don't have that kind of money, Rachel said, her voice breaking. Scarface stepped closer, looming over her. That's not our problem. Logan made a deal, and now it's your debt. You've got 24 hours to come up with the cash, or things get unpleasant. After they left, Rachel collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. I stood by the window, watching as their car disappeared into the night. My mind was a storm of anger, fear, and betrayal. This is your fault, I said, my voice cold. Rachel looked up, her eyes wide with shock. Michael, please. Don't. I snapped. You lied to me. You dragged me into this mess. And now these people think we owe them 50 grand. She buried her face in her hands, her sobs muffled. I didn't know it would get this bad. I was just trying to help. I turned away, unable to look at her. My mind raced for solutions. The bank accounts were empty thanks to her generosity with Logan. Selling the house would take too long. And even if I could come up with the money, there was no guarantee these men wouldn't come back for more. We need a plan, I said finally, turning back to her. Something to make them think twice about coming after us. Rachel wiped her eyes. Like what? Like taking the fight to them, I said. The next day, I did something I never thought I'd do. I reached out to an old acquaintance with connections to the criminal underworld. His name was Derek, and while we hadn't spoken in years, I knew he'd have the resources and knowledge we needed. "You're in deep," Derek said after I explained the situation. "These guys don't play games. If you want them off your back, you've got two options. Pay up, or scare them enough that they back off." "How do we do that?" I asked. Derek leaned back, a sly grin on his face. "You hit them where it hurts. Their reputation. Make them look weak, and they'll have no choice but to let you go." "And how do we do that?" "I've got an idea," he said, "but it's going to require you to get your hands dirty." That night, armed with information Derek had provided, Rachel and I set out to turn the tables. It wasn't about revenge, it was about survival. If these men wanted to destroy our lives, we'd make sure they thought twice before trying. We followed them to a warehouse on the outskirts of town, a hub for their operations. Using a combination of Derek's intel and sheer desperation, we planted evidence that would lead their rivals to believe they were skimming profits. It was risky, but if it worked, the syndicate would be too busy dealing with internal chaos to bother with us. The next morning, Derek called with an update. "You've got their attention. Word is their boss is furious. If you lay low, this might just blow over." Rachel and I spent the next few days in a tense limbo, waiting for the fallout. Every knock on the door, every shadow outside the window set my heart racing. But the retaliation we feared never came. A week later, Derek confirmed the news. The syndicate had imploded, their leadership turning on each other over the false evidence we'd planted. Scarface and the tall man were among the casualties. Rachel and I sat in silence, processing what we'd done. The immediate threat was gone, but the cost was undeniable. Our trust was shattered, our marriage hanging by a thread. "What now?" Rachel asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I looked at her, the woman I once thought I'd spend my life with. "Now we figure out if there's anything left to save." But deep down, I wasn't sure there was. The person I thought I was, the life I thought I had, was gone forever. The weeks after the syndicate's collapse were a blur of uneasy quiet. For the first time, there were no knocks at the door, no shadowy figures watching from a distance. But the silence was heavy, not with relief, but with the weight of everything that had been lost. Rachel and I lived like strangers in the same house. The space between us felt like a chasm, filled with unsaid words and unresolved anger. She tried to reach out, cooking my favorite meals, leaving little notes on the counter like she used to. But I couldn't bring myself to respond. "Michael," she said one evening as I sat on the couch, staring blankly at the television. "Can we talk?" I didn't look at her. "About what?" "About us. About everything that's happened," she said, her voice trembling. I sighed, turning to face her. "What's there to talk about, Rachel? You lied to me. You risked everything we had. And for what? For him." Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away. "I made mistakes. I know that. But I never stopped loving you, Michael. I was just lost. And I thought I was helping someone who needed me." "And what about me?" I asked, my voice rising. "Did I ever cross your mind while you were throwing our life away?" She flinched but didn't answer. The silence between us said more than words ever could. The next morning, I woke up to find Rachel packing a suitcase. "What are you doing?" I asked, leaning against the doorway. She didn't look at me as she folded a sweater. "I think I need to give you space to figure out what you want." I crossed my arms, watching her. Part of me wanted to stop her, to tell her we could fix this. But another part, the part that still burned with anger and betrayal, said nothing. "Maybe that's for the best," I said finally. She paused, her shoulders sagging, before zipping the suitcase shut. "I'll stay with my sister for a while. If you ever want to talk." She trailed off, her voice breaking. I didn't respond as she walked past me, out the door, and out of our life together. In the weeks that followed, I tried to piece myself back together. I went to work, met friends for drinks, and even started therapy at the suggestion of a colleague. But no matter how much I tried to move forward, memories of Rachel lingered. Her laugh, her smile, the way she used to hum while cooking dinner, they haunted me in the quiet moments. One day, I received a letter in the mail. The handwriting was familiar, and my heart sank as I opened it. "Michael, I know I'm the last person you want to hear from right now, but I wanted to thank you for everything you've done, even when I didn't deserve it. I'm trying to find my way, just like you. And I hope that someday, we can find our way back to each other. Until then, take care of yourself. Love, Rachel." I stared at the letter for a long time, unsure of how to feel. Part of me wanted to tear it up and throw it away. But another part, the part that still remembered the woman I had fallen in love with, carefully folded it and placed it in a drawer. Months turned into a year, and life began to take on a new shape. I started dating again, cautiously opening myself up to the possibility of love. Rachel's name stopped coming up in conversations with friends, and the house no longer felt like a monument to what we had lost. One evening, as I sat on the porch watching the sunset, my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number.
Michael.
"I just wanted to let you know I'm doing well. I hope you are too." I stared at the message for a long time before typing a response. "I'm glad to hear that. Take care, Rachel." I hit send, then set the phone down, watching as the sun dipped below the horizon. For the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. Our story had ended, but life went on. And so did I. The message from Rachel lingered in my thoughts long after I sent my response. Though brief, it felt like a final punctuation mark on a chapter of my life that had consumed me for far too long. It wasn't closure in the conventional sense, but it was enough. Our paths had diverged, and for the first time I truly felt that was okay. The following months were marked by quiet transformation. I poured myself into my work, picking up projects I had once put on hold. The energy I had spent on anger and regret was now redirected toward rebuilding. Small victories, a successful pitch, a completed project, began to stack up, creating a sense of momentum I hadn't felt in years. I continued therapy, not just to process the past but to better understand myself. Why had I stayed in the relationship as long as I did? Why had Rachel's betrayal cut so deeply? The answers were complex, layered in years of trust, love, and the expectations I had placed on what our marriage was supposed to be. Letting go wasn't about forgetting. It was about forgiving myself for not seeing the cracks sooner. One evening, I found myself at a gallery opening with colleagues. Art had never been my passion, but the vibrant colors and bold strokes of the paintings on display resonated with me in a way I didn't expect. It was there that I met someone, Clara. She wasn't like Rachel. Where Rachel had been poised and calculated, Clara was warm and unguarded. We struck up a conversation about the art, which transitioned effortlessly into talking about travel, books, and the little quirks that made us laugh. By the end of the night, I had her number, and for the first time in years, I felt the stirrings of genuine excitement. Clara and I took things slow. She knew I had been through a difficult divorce, and she never pressed for details. Instead, she focused on the present, drawing me into her world of curiosity and spontaneity. We hiked trails I'd never heard of, cooked elaborate meals that often ended in hilarious disaster, and spent hours talking about everything and nothing. It wasn't perfect, no relationship is, but it was real. And as the months turned into a year, I realized I wasn't just moving on. I was growing. One afternoon, as Clara and I strolled through the park, she stopped to admire a street performer playing the violin. The melody was hauntingly beautiful, and for a moment, it transported me back to a memory of Rachel. Not the betrayal or the chaos, but a simpler time, when we had danced in the kitchen to music playing from a cheap radio. Clara must have noticed the shift in my expression because she squeezed my hand. "You okay?" she asked softly.
He nodded, smiling at her.
"Yeah, I am. And I meant it. The memory didn't hurt anymore. It was just a part of my story, one piece of a much larger puzzle." Years later, I received a wedding invitation in the mail. It was from Rachel. She was marrying someone new, and though I didn't know the man, the invitation was heartfelt and kind. I considered attending but ultimately decided against it. Not out of bitterness, but because I felt no need to revisit that part of my life. Instead, I sent a gift, a framed print of a painting I'd seen with Clara. It was of a sunrise over the ocean, vibrant and full of hope. Along with it, I included a simple note, * wishing you happiness and peace in this new chapter of your life. Take care, Rachel. *. As I sealed the envelope, Clara walked into the room, her hair still damp from the shower. She sat beside me, leaning her head on my shoulder. "You ready to go?" she asked, referring to the weekend trip we'd planned. "Yeah," I said, smiling at her. "Let's go." And as we drove off into the horizon, I felt it again. Peace. The kind that comes not from forgetting the past, but from knowing it no longer defines you. Life had moved on, and so had I, toward something brighter, something worth holding on to. The years that followed were filled with a kind of peace I never thought I'd find. Clara and I built a life together, one marked by the simplicity of shared moments and the joy of looking forward rather than backward. My career flourished, and for the first time, I felt like I was living rather than merely surviving. Rachel's name came up less and less as time went on. The wounds she left had healed into scars, faint reminders of a past that no longer defined me. I still kept her letter in a drawer, not out of sentimentality, but as a testament to how far I'd come. Clara and I got married in a small ceremony by the sea, surrounded by friends and family. It was nothing like the grand wedding I'd once had with Rachel, but it was perfect in its own way. As we exchanged vows, I felt a sense of clarity and purpose I'd never experienced before. This was my second chance, and I was determined to make the most of it. One evening, years later, I received an unexpected email. The sender's name stopped me cold. Rachel.
Michael.
*. I know it's been a long time, but I came across something that made me think of you. I wanted to say thank you, not just for the time we had, but for letting me go when you did. It allowed me to find myself, and I hope you found the same. Wishing you all the happiness in the world. *. Best, Rachel. I sat with the email for a long time before responding. My reply was brief but genuine.
Y Rachel.
Thank you for your kind words. I'm glad to hear you're doing well. Wishing you the same happiness and peace. Take care, Michael. As I hit send, I realized that any lingering bitterness or regret had vanished. Rachel was no longer a part of my life, but her presence had shaped it in ways I could finally appreciate without pain. Clara found me sitting on the porch later that evening, a glass of wine in hand. She sat beside me, resting her head on my shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. I smiled, taking her hand in mine. "The past, but not in a bad way." She squeezed my hand. "Well, here's to the future." We raised our glasses to the horizon, the sky painted with the colors of dusk. And as the first stars appeared, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the love I had lost, the lessons I had learned, and the life I had built anew. The seasons continued to change, marking the passage of years in a life now defined by growth and fulfillment. Clara and I found joy in the small, consistent rhythms of our days. Weekends spent exploring nearby trails, quiet evenings with a favorite book, and mornings filled with the smell of fresh coffee became the foundation of our shared life. It was a peace I had never truly known, and I held it close. One summer, Clara and I decided to start a family. The journey wasn't without its challenges, but the process brought us closer. When our daughter, Lila, was born, the weight of her tiny hand gripping my finger filled me with a sense of purpose I hadn't realized I was missing. Clara and I marveled at the way Lila's presence transformed our home into something even more alive, more vibrant. As Lila grew, so did my understanding of the kind of man I wanted to be. Fatherhood brought clarity and perspective. The lessons of the past became guideposts, shaping how I approached the future. I promised myself that Lila would grow up in a home filled with honesty, love, and security. A promise I worked hard to keep every day. One crisp autumn morning, as Clara and I watched Lila chase leaves in the backyard, my phone buzzed with an unexpected notification. It was a message from an old mutual friend of Rachel and me, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Hey Michael, I thought you'd want to know. Rachel passed away last week. It was sudden but peaceful. She'd spoken about how grateful she was for the life she'd rebuilt. Just thought you should know. The news hit me harder than I expected. I sat with it for a long time, unsure of how to process the emotions it stirred. There was no anger or regret, just a quiet sadness for the person she had been and the life she had lived after we parted ways. Clara noticed my shift in mood and came to sit beside me. "What's wrong?" she asked gently. I showed her the message. She read it, then placed her hand over mine. "How do you feel?" "It's complicated," I admitted, "but I think I'm okay." I'm glad she found peace. Clara nodded, her expression soft. That's all any of us can hope for. In the days that followed, I found myself reflecting on my journey. Rachel's presence had been a defining part of my life for so long, but her passing felt like the closing of a book I had already set down. It wasn't closure in the dramatic sense. It was quiet, like the final note of a symphony that lingered just long enough before fading into silence. Life continued. Lila's laughter filled our home, and Clara's warmth grounded me in the present. I carried the past with me not as a burden, but as a reminder of the resilience that had brought me to this place. And as I watched the sun dip below the horizon one evening, with Clara by my side and Lila playing nearby, I felt it again, that overwhelming sense of gratitude. Not for a perfect life, but for a life that was whole, earned, and deeply cherished. The years continued to pass, each one bringing its own quiet joys and challenges. Lila grew into a bright, curious child who filled our home with laughter and endless questions about the world. Clara and I found ourselves rediscovering life through her eyes, and it brought a depth to our days that neither of us had anticipated. One evening, as we sat around the dinner table, Lila asked a question that caught me off guard. "Dad, do you ever think about what your life was like before you met Mom?" I exchanged a glance with Clara, who smiled softly. "Sometimes," I admitted, "but it's not as important as the life I have now." Lila tilted her head, considering my words. "Why not?" "Because the past is part of what brought me here," I said, reaching across the table to squeeze Clara's hand. "But what matters most is where I am now, with the people I love." Satisfied with my answer, Lila turned her attention back to her plate, and the moment passed. But the question lingered with me, stirring memories I hadn't revisited in a long time. One crisp winter morning, while cleaning out the attic, I came across a box of old letters and photographs. Among them was the letter Rachel had written to me years ago. I hadn't looked at it since I first tucked it away, but now, as I unfolded the paper, I felt a sense of calm. Reading her words again, I realized how far I had come. The anger, the hurt, even the lingering questions. They had all faded, leaving only a quiet gratitude for the lessons the past had taught me. Rachel's story was no longer something I carried with me. It was simply a chapter that had shaped the man I had become. I placed the letter back in the box and closed the lid, sealing it with a sense of finality. The past was exactly where it needed to be. As the years turned into decades, Clara and I watched Lila grow into an incredible young woman. She inherited Clara's adventurous spirit and my love for storytelling, carving her own path with a confidence that made us both proud. On the evening of her college graduation, as we sat together under a canopy of stars, Lila turned to me with a smile. "Thanks for everything, Dad. You've always been my rock." Her words brought tears to my eyes. "You've given me more than I could ever give you," I said, pulling her into a hug. Clara reached for my hand, and the three of us sat in comfortable silence, basking in the moment. The weight of the past had long since lifted, replaced by the warmth of a life well lived. As I reflect on it all now, I am struck by the profound simplicity of it. Life moves forward. The pain, the mistakes, the triumphs, they all weave together into something whole. And while the past shapes us, it is the present that defines us. My story isn't one of perfection, but of resilience and love. And as I watch the next generation take its first steps into the world, I feel nothing but gratitude for every twist and turn that brought me here. As the years unfolded, life became a tapestry woven with moments of peace, joy, and subtle nostalgia. Clara and I celebrated milestones with Lila, marveling at her growth and the person she was becoming. She carried with her a spark of curiosity and kindness that illuminated our lives. On her wedding day, as I walked Lila down the aisle, I couldn't help but reflect on how far we'd come. The music swelled, and I glanced at Clara, who stood at the front with tears glistening in her eyes. The memories of my past life with Rachel surfaced briefly, not as wounds but as gentle reminders of the paths that had led me here. Lila's vows were heartfelt, filled with the kind of optimism and love that only comes from knowing security and trust. I felt a swell of pride, not just for her, but for the life Clara and I had built together, a life that had weathered storms and emerged stronger. In the quieter years that followed, Clara and I leaned into the simple pleasures of a slower pace. We traveled to places we'd once only dreamed of, savoring every sunset, every unfamiliar flavor, every whispered conversation under foreign stars. Lila visited often, bringing stories of her own adventures and, eventually, her own children who filled our home with laughter once again. One afternoon, as Clara and I sat on the porch watching our grandchildren play, she reached over and took my hand. "You ever think about how it all started?" she asked, her voice warm with affection. I nodded, squeezing her hand gently. "Sometimes, but only to remind myself how lucky I am to be here." She smiled, resting her head on my shoulder. "Me too." The seasons continued their steady march, and with them came the inevitable passage of time. Clara and I grew older, our steps slower but our bond as strong as ever. On our 50th wedding anniversary, surrounded by family and friends, I stood to give a toast. To Clara, I began, my voice thick with emotion. "The love of my life, the partner who helped me find peace and purpose, and to the journey we've shared, one of resilience, laughter, and a love that has only grown deeper with time. Here's to every twist and turn that brought us here." The room erupted in applause, and as I sat back down, Clara leaned in close. "I'd marry you all over again," she whispered. "Good thing you're stuck with me," I replied with a wink. Now, as I sit here penning these reflections, the house is quiet. Clara is reading in the next room, her laughter occasionally drifting through the open door as she flips through an old family album. The sun is setting, casting a warm glow over the years we've shared. My story isn't one of perfection, but it is one of perseverance. Every moment, every choice, every heartbreak has led to this life. A life filled with gratitude and love. And as the light fades into evening, I am content, knowing that my journey has been full, my heart whole, and my story complete. As the twilight years of my life unfolded, the rhythm of days settled into a comforting pattern. Clara and I cherished every moment, our bond deepened by decades of shared experiences. Lila, now with a family of her own, continued to visit often, her children bringing the kind of joy only grandchildren can provide. Their laughter filled the house, echoing through the halls and reminding us of life's enduring beauty. One morning, as Clara and I sat by the fireplace, sipping tea and reading, she looked up from her book and caught me staring at her. She smiled, her eyes as bright as they had been the day we met. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. I set my book down, taking her hand in mine. "Just how lucky I am. How lucky I've always been." She laughed softly. "After all this time, you still know how to make me blush." The warmth of her touch, the sound of her laughter. These were the moments I treasured most. They were the quiet anchors of a life that had seen its share of storms but always found its way back to calm waters. As the years passed, we made the decision to downsize, moving to a smaller house closer to Lila and her family. It was bittersweet to leave the home where so many memories had been made, but the change felt right. The new house was cozy, its walls soon adorned with photographs capturing a lifetime of love and adventure. Lila's children visited often, their energy filling the rooms with life. Clara and I took joy in their curiosity, answering endless questions and sharing stories of our youth. Each visit was a reminder of the legacy we had built. A legacy not of wealth or status, but of love and resilience. One autumn evening, as Clara and I walked hand in hand through the neighborhood, She stopped beneath a canopy of golden leaves. The setting sun cast a warm glow over her face, and she turned to me with a look of contentment. "We've had a good life, haven't we?" she said. I nodded, my voice thick with emotion. "The best." She leaned into me, her head resting on my shoulder as we stood there in the quiet embrace of the moment. The world seemed to pause, allowing us to savor the profound simplicity of being together. As I sit here now, writing these final reflections, the house is quiet. Clara is napping in her favorite chair, the soft rise and fall of her breath a soothing rhythm. The sunlight streaming through the window casts a golden glow over her, and I am struck by the depth of my gratitude. Life, with all its twists and turns, has been kind to me. The pain of the past, the mistakes, the moments of doubt, they all led to this. A life filled with love, laughter, and an enduring sense of peace. When my time comes, I know I will leave this world with a full heart. For in Clara, in Lila, and in the family we built together, I found everything I could have ever hoped for. And that, I know, is enough. As the final chapter of my life drew closer, I found myself reflecting more deeply on the journey that had brought me here. The echoes of my past, once sharp and haunting, had softened into a quiet backdrop against the richness of the present. Clara's steady presence, Lila's boundless energy, and the laughter of grandchildren who filled our home with light were all reminders of a life well lived. One evening, as Clara and I sat on the porch watching the sun dip below the horizon, she reached for my hand. Her grip was softer now, her fingers delicate and worn from years of love and care. "Do you think we did it right?" she asked, her voice carrying a note of vulnerability I rarely heard. I looked at her, the woman who had been my partner through every storm and every triumph. "I think we did our best, and our best was more than enough." Her eyes glistened in the fading light, and she smiled, leaning her head against my shoulder. In that moment, I knew she felt the same peace that had settled over me in recent years, a peace earned through resilience and love. As time marched on, I began to feel my body slowing down. Simple tasks took longer, and my strength waned, but my heart remained full. Clara and I spent our days surrounded by family, their presence a constant reminder of the legacy we had built together. Lila often stopped by with her children, filling the house with stories and laughter that echoed through the halls like music. One afternoon, as I sat in my favorite chair by the window, I found myself penning a letter to Lila. I wanted her to know the depth of my love and pride, to understand the lessons I'd learned through the twists and turns of life. "My dearest Lila, asterisk if you're reading this, it means I've moved on from this life. But know this, every moment I spent with you was a gift I cherished beyond measure. Life will throw its share of challenges your way, but you have the strength to overcome them. Never doubt that. Remember to hold on to love, to fight for joy, and to always find your way back to what truly matters. Asterisk. With all my love, Dad." I sealed the letter and placed it in a drawer, knowing she would find it when the time was right. The day finally came when my body could no longer keep up with my spirit. Surrounded by Clara, Lila, and my grandchildren, I felt no fear, only gratitude. Clara held my hand as I drifted between moments of clarity and rest, her presence a steady anchor. "I love you," she whispered, her voice breaking. I mustered the strength to squeeze her hand. "And I love you, always." With my family by my side, I felt the weight of a life well lived and the gentle embrace of peace. As the world faded, I carried with me the laughter, love, and resilience that had defined my journey. And in my heart I knew it had been enough. In the quiet days following my father's passing, I found myself alone in his study, the room filled with the familiar scent of old books and leather. This space had always been a sanctuary for him, a place where he would write, reflect, and lose himself in thought. Now it was where I sought to feel closest to him. As I sifted through his belongings, I discovered a drawer tucked away in the corner of his desk. Inside was a sealed envelope with my name written in his unmistakable handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it, revealing a letter that brought tears to my eyes. My dearest Lila, if you're reading this, it means I've moved on from this life. But know this, every moment I spent with you was a gift I cherished beyond measure. Life will throw its share of challenges your way, but you have the strength to overcome them. Never doubt that. Remember to hold on to love, to fight for joy, and to always find your way back to what truly matters. With all my love, Dad. I sat there for what felt like hours, the letter resting in my lap as I let his words wash over me. They weren't just words of comfort. They were a roadmap, a reminder of the values he had lived by and instilled in me. In the weeks that followed, our family came together to honor his memory. We shared stories of his kindness, his humor, and his unwavering love. My mother, though grief-stricken, carried herself with the grace and strength he had always admired in her. Together, we planted a tree in the backyard, a living tribute to the legacy he had left behind. Life moved forward as it always does, but his absence was felt in the small, everyday moments. The quiet hum of his typewriter, the way he would hum while brewing his morning coffee, the warm reassurance of his presence during family gatherings. Yet, in those moments I also felt his spirit, a gentle reminder that he was still with us in the ways that truly mattered. Years later, as I watched my own children play beneath the shade of the tree we had planted, I found myself sharing his lessons with them. His words, his values, and his love had become a part of me, and now they were a part of them. The laughter that echoed through the yard was a testament to the life he had lived, one filled with resilience, love, and unwavering hope. And as I sat beneath the branches of that tree, my father's letter tucked safely in my pocket, I knew that his story had not ended. It lived on in me, in my family, and in the generations to come. The years that followed were a testament to the enduring power of love and memory. My father's presence continued to guide me in ways both subtle and profound. Though his physical absence was undeniable, the lessons he imparted and the love he shared remained as vivid as ever. As my children grew, I often found myself drawing from the wisdom he had passed down. Whenever they faced challenges, I would repeat his words: hold on to love, fight for joy, and always find your way back to what truly matters. Those words became a family mantra, shaping the way we navigated the ups and downs of life. The tree we had planted in his memory flourished, its branches stretching high into the sky. It became a gathering place for our family, a symbol of resilience and growth. On warm summer evenings, we would sit beneath its shade, sharing stories of the man who had shaped our lives in ways too numerous to count. One day, as I prepared for a family reunion, I came across an old journal tucked away in a box of keepsakes. It was my father's, its pages filled with his thoughts, dreams, and reflections. As I flipped through the pages, I felt as though I was having a conversation with him, his voice coming alive through the ink on the paper. One entry in particular stood out: "Life is never perfect, but it is always worth it." The love we give and the connections we make are what truly matter. If I leave this world having loved deeply and lived authentically, then I will have done enough. Asterisk. Tears welled in my eyes as I read those words. They were a reminder of the life he had lived and the legacy he had left behind. I decided to share the journal with my family during the reunion, knowing that his words would inspire them as they had inspired me. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, we gathered beneath the tree to read passages from the journal. My children listened intently, their faces lit with curiosity and admiration. My mother, now older but still as graceful as ever, shared her own memories, painting a vivid picture of the man who had been her partner in life. As the night wore on, I felt a deep sense of connection to everyone around me. My father's legacy wasn't just in the words he had written or the lessons he had taught. It was in the love that bound us together, the laughter that filled the air, and the strength that carried us through life's challenges. Years later, as I sat beneath the tree with my grandchildren, I told them stories of their great-grandfather. Their eyes widened with wonder as I described his kindness, his resilience, and his unwavering belief in the power of love. They asked questions, their curiosity mirroring my own when I was their age. One of them, a bright-eyed boy named Liam, looked up at me and asked, "Do you think he's watching us now?" I smiled, my heart full. I think he's always with us, in the ways that matter most. And as the wind rustled through the leaves of the tree, I felt his presence once more. A quiet, steady reminder that his story would continue to live on through us, in the love we shared and the lives we touched. As time carried us forward, the lessons of my father's life became even more integral to our family's journey. The tree we had planted in his memory continued to grow, its branches reaching skyward as if to bridge the gap between earth and the heavens. It became a sacred place, not only for reflection but for new memories, a living symbol of continuity. My grandchildren grew up knowing the stories of their great-grandfather. Every summer, we would gather beneath the tree, the shade a welcome respite from the sun, and share tales of his wisdom and kindness. The journal he had left behind became a cherished artifact, passed among family members during these gatherings, its pages worn from years of love and careful handling. One summer, my eldest grandchild, Emma, announced that she wanted to write a book inspired by the journal. "It's like a treasure chest of lessons," she said, her eyes alight with enthusiasm. "I think the world could learn from it just like we have." Her determination reminded me so much of my father. I encouraged her, offering to help in any way I could. Over the next year, Emma worked tirelessly, weaving his words into a narrative that captured not just his thoughts but the essence of the man he had been. When the book was published, its impact was immediate. Readers from all walks of life reached out, sharing how his words had touched them, helped them navigate challenges, and reminded them of the importance of love and authenticity. It was as though my father's spirit had found a new way to connect with the world. As the years turned into decades, the tree continued to stand as a silent witness to our family's growth. Its roots grew deeper, anchoring it firmly in the earth, much like the values my father had instilled in us. My grandchildren's children played beneath its branches, their laughter mingling with the rustling leaves in a melody of life's continuity. One day, as I sat beneath the tree with my great-grandson, Ethan, he asked a question that caught me off guard. "What do you think your dad would say if he could see all of this?" I smiled, my heart swelling with both pride and longing. "I think he'd say that it's everything he hoped for and more, that he'd be proud of all of us." Ethan nodded, his young mind processing the weight of my words. "I'll make him proud too," he said confidently. And in that moment, I saw the unbroken chain of love and resilience stretching far into the future. Now, as I approach the twilight of my own life, I find immense comfort in the knowledge that my father's legacy is secure. It lives in the stories we tell, the love we share, and the lives we touch. And as I sit beneath the tree one last time, surrounded by the laughter of generations, I feel his presence once more. Steady, reassuring, and eternal. As the years wove together into a rich tapestry of memories, the tree in our yard stood as a silent guardian of our family's story. Its roots reached deep into the earth, mirroring the unshakable bond that connected generations of our family. Beneath its expansive canopy, we celebrated milestones, grieved losses, and shared laughter that echoed through the years. Emma's book had grown beyond anything we imagined. It became a beacon of hope for countless readers, sparking a movement of reflection and gratitude in their own lives. Schools and communities began planting trees in honor of loved ones, inspired by the symbol that had become central to our family. One such event brought Emma and me to a small-town library, where she had been invited to speak. As she recounted the stories from her great-grandfather's journal, I saw the audience captivated by her words. The same light that had once shone in her eyes when she first dreamed of writing the book now illuminated the room. After her talk, a woman approached us with tears in her eyes. "Your family's story helped me reconnect with mine," she said. "Thank you for sharing his wisdom." I placed a hand on Emma's shoulder, pride swelling in my chest. "It's what he would have wanted," I said. Back at home, the tree's branches stretched higher, a testament to the passage of time. My great-grandchildren now played beneath it, their laughter carrying the same notes of innocence and joy that had once filled my own childhood. One afternoon, as I watched them chase each other in the dappled sunlight, my youngest great-granddaughter, Lily, climbed into my lap. "Grandpa," she began, her small voice full of curiosity, "what's the most important thing your dad ever taught you?" I paused, considering her question. "He taught me that life is about love," I said. "Loving deeply, living authentically, and always finding joy in the people around you." She nodded solemnly, as though filing the words away in her heart. "I'll remember that," she promised. In my final years, I often found myself sitting beneath the tree, soaking in the beauty of a life well lived. Clara's presence remained my anchor, her love as steadfast as the day we first met. Together, we marveled at the legacy our family had built, each generation adding its own layer to the story. As the twilight of my life approached, I felt no fear. The tree, the laughter of children, and the echoes of my father's words reminded me that I was part of something greater, an unbroken chain of love and resilience. And so, with the sun setting and Clara's hand in mine, I closed my eyes, feeling the gentle rustle of the tree's leaves as a final embrace from the man who had started it all. His legacy lived on, not just in the roots of the tree, but in the hearts of everyone who had ever gathered beneath it. The tree stood tall, a sentinel of memory and love, as generations came and went. In its shade, stories were told, laughter echoed, and tears of both joy and sorrow mingled with the soil that nourished its roots. It became more than a tree. It was a living testament to resilience, family, and the power of enduring connections. After my passing, the family continued to gather beneath the tree. Clara, ever the matriarch, shared her wisdom with younger generations, her voice steady and warm. The journal, now a family treasure, was passed from hand to hand, each new reader discovering the timeless truths my father had written so long ago. Emma's book found its way into classrooms, libraries, and homes around the world. Readers often reached out to share how the story of our family had inspired them to cherish their own. The ripple effects of one man's love and lessons spanned far beyond what any of us could have imagined. One day, many years later, Lily, now an adult with children of her own, stood beneath the tree with her family. She traced her fingers along its bark, feeling the grooves that had deepened over time. Her youngest daughter tugged at her hand. "Mama, is this the tree Grandpa wrote about?" the little girl asked. Lily smiled, her eyes misty. "Yes, sweetie. This is the tree where it all began." Her daughter's eyes widened. "Can we write our stories here too?" "We can," Lily said, "because this tree belongs to all of us. It holds all of our stories." The family planted a new sapling beside the old tree that day, a symbol of growth and renewal. As they worked together, laughter and love filled the air. The cycle of life continued, rooted in the foundation of those who came before. The original tree's leaves rustled in the breeze, a quiet blessing on the new generation. Its roots stretched deep, intertwining with those of the sapling, binding the past to the future. The legacy lived on, not in grandeur or fame,